So Tom and I were talking earlier. We recorded actually a podcast, and we talked about a lot of different things. But one thing I want to just touch on that we didn't talk about earlier, and I think it's a story that helps me understand the attitude that you come to organizations with, was the Seabees in World War II, when they said, "Hey, we need a runway here on this island in 5 days," or whatever it was. Cut out the bureaucracy, get it done.
It's a wonderful story, really. When the war in the Pacific came, we had to get across the Pacific, which meant island hopping. And you did have some marine engineers that did whatever marine engineers did, but we were going to be island hopping, we were going to be building runways, and so on. And there's a group in the Navy called the Civil Engineer Corps. And there was a guy by the name of Ben Morrell, who was the admiral in charge of the Civil Engineer Corps. And what he did, and literally the hairs stand up on the back of my neck, and I honestly mean that when I tell the story. He went around from Union Hall to Union Hall to Union Hall. And he said, "We've got to do this." He said, "I guarantee you, you will not have to polish your shoes. You will not have to salute anybody. We will teach you which end of the gun the bullet comes out of, but that'll just be a short course. You are here to build. You are here to build. You are here to build fast. We will guarantee you that every piece of equipment you have will be a piece of crap. There's no issue about that whatsoever. People will be shooting at you. Do it." And the motto of the Seabees is two wonderful words: can do. And I will tell you that literally my 2 years in the Seabees, and I was 75 3 months ago, my 2 years in the Seabees were the most important years in my life. And to just continue this a little bit without going too far, my wife beat out Larry to be number one on the dedication list. And the second one is Captain Richard E. Anderson, CECUSN. He was my commanding officer in Vietnam. And I loved my father dearly, but Captain Anderson was the single most important mentor that I had in my life. And what I remember so much about Captain Anderson is he was, as Larry said, determined. We were going to build and build and build fast, and it is true. The Seabees in World War II did full-length runways in 10 or 11 or 12 days, and they did it through rock and every other damn thing. It's just an amazing story. You ought to get some of the videos on them. You know, our final ultimate was John Wayne starred in a movie called Seabees of the Navy. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, or at least it didn't in those days. But Captain Anderson made it clear that first and foremost, we were responsible for the well-being of our sailors. It was build it now, build it fast, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for the lives and well-being of the people who report to you. You know, we know you're a crappy leader, we know you don't know anything. What we do know is it is your legal and, more important, moral responsibility to take care of those troops. I have this damned MBA, but my real MBA and all of my leadership training really came because God smiled and I had two commanding officers and I was in Vietnam for 2 deployments. I call them Captain Day and Captain Night. Captain Day was Dick Anderson, Captain Anderson, who taught me everything I know. Captain Night, I think I can describe this quite easily. Captain Night would rather have had a perfect report about something that never got built than, in fact, have something that was built on time, but the paperwork stunk. And Captain Anderson, I think, never asked us once for the paperwork. And paperwork is important for lots of reasons, including legal reasons, and I know that you all deal with that every day, and I'm not dismissing it, but Anderson's whole deal was, in fact, take care of the troops, get the job done, don't tell me your problems, you are here to build it, and that was the ball game. And you saw him, I don't think in the 9 months we were there that he ever visited his own office. You know, he was always out on the job site. He was always, I can still see him today in that old Willys Jeep that he drove around in. It was a total piece of crap, and he was an awful driver. And so you would hear the damn thing and its gears crunching from a million miles away. And he had the world's biggest smile, and you really knew that he cared. He just cared. Larry's okay is number 3, but Captain Anderson gets 2.
All right.
And naturally, not being a total idiot, my wife gets number 1.
So a concept that we hear there is that in the CBs, and we talk about this at the School of Entrepreneurship, that when you reel in your time frame to accomplish a goal, everything speeds up. When you push out your time frame, everything slows down, right? We talk about that, okay? So we can make things happen faster or slower, and in the CBs, you don't have time for bureaucracy. You don't have time for red tape and excuses. You know, we get things done quickly. But so your first book, In Search of Excellence, and then I listened to Thriving on Chaos as a young man, and then other great books. You have so many books, 18 books since In Search of Excellence. But you also mentioned us in your book, Little Big Things.
Right.
But the common theme through all the books is excellence. So tell us, what is excellence? What are you talking about, Tom?
Well, part of it, and to be sure I've got all these analytic degrees, part of it, or a large part of it, is you know it when you see it. Something that you say, oh my God. And I'll tell you one little story that to me, A, defines it, and B, given what most of you do, defines it in a service industry. I was flying from Albany, New York to Washington to BWI. It was probably a year or so ago. And I was flying on my favorite airline, Southwest Airlines. And the pilots came in on a flight that was 7 or 8 gates down, and they came in late. And to put it mildly, in the airline industry, late doesn't work very well. And so they were running like hell. The pressure is on to get down to our gate, right? So the pilots get down to the gate. The situation that everybody in this room has seen was there. We had 6 or 7 wheelchairs, right, that were stacked up. The pilot's under pressure. He arrived late. Don't screw around, go full speed. But I believe I have, to my credit, approximately 7,500 flight legs, pathetic as that may sound. The pilot turns to the woman in the first wheelchair and says, would you mind if I took you down the jetway? 7,500 flight legs, and I have never seen it before. And I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and they said, I've never even seen a pilot look at a passenger when they're heading for a plane. But the point is, relative to what you all do, relative to what all of us do, yeah, the job's got to be done on time. Yeah, the job's got to be done with technical excellence. What do you remember in life? Do you remember that pilot? You know, those are the things. Those are the things that you remember forever, the little touches. I was saying to Larry, I lived in San Francisco in 1989 and was actually in Candlestick Park when we had the great earthquake of 1989. And I lived down the road about 30 miles, and you know, we weren't destroyed in any way, shape, or form, but everybody had cracks here and cracks there. And so we had not had much work done on the house, and so we called to get a recommendation for a contractor. And so the meeting with the contractor, let's say it was the 26th of April at 11 o'clock, okay? And we had a good reputation, for God's sakes. We weren't flying blind. I was outside doing something, and it was about 10 minutes of 11, and through my hedge, I saw a truck pull up. and stop. And I really wasn't thinking much about it. Looked like the kind of pickup that a contractor might have been driving. And so I wasn't thinking about it, and I kept on doing what I was doing. And I know I did not have a stopwatch, but at 11 o'clock on the dot, and perhaps to the second, the contractor walked in and knocked on our front door. He had the job. I mean, he knew how to do the job, and he had good recommendations. He was a good builder and so on, and the price was, roughly right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What am I doing? 1989, 2018, that is 29 years, and I am telling you about a guy who showed up at the front door on time. That's what the hell I remember. I don't even remember what the hell he rebuilt, but I do remember the price tag. It was $700,000 renovation. It was the usual crap. We thought it would be $100, and then my wife, the one to whom I dedicated the book, found all kinds of interesting things to do as we went along. But I remember 29 years later, I remember both halves. I remember not only the fact that he arrived to the second, but I remember the fact that the truck pulled up at 10 minutes of 11. And he came in that's what the hell you remember in life. And that's excellence. And back to the beginning point, I don't know how you define it. You know it when you see it, but it's just some little touch that goes above and beyond. And the big word is little. It's the little things that stick in your mind. And of course, the secret, as Larry and I have talked about, is in your hiring practices, your training practices, and so on. What you need is 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 or 30 or 35 people or whatever the number is working for you who really get that and go out of their way, to do those little things. I mean, the other part of us telling Larry, my wife and I lived in Vermont for about 20 years, and there was a good construction company called Bread Loaf Construction. And there is something called walking on water, and then there's something above walking on water. And that is how the hell a construction company with white trucks during the middle of mud season in Vermont can have spotless trucks. I have no idea how the hell they did. But my God, they might as well have bought Super Bowl ads. It was just absurd. I don't know how many of you have been to Vermont in mud season, but mud season in Vermont it's mud. It is pure, unmitigated mud. And yet, every time you'd see one of these damn bread loaf trucks, they would just be absolutely glorious pieces of sculpture. And the answer is, yeah, they did good work. And of course they did good work. And they did the work, presumably, I never had them because they were a commercial contractor, and they did the work on time and so on. But what did you remember? The whole bloody community remembered the clean bread loaf trucks.